All right. Hello. Welcome to this on-demand webinar. My name is Jackie and this is Faith here. We are going to be recording this video so that you guys can watch this at your leisure anytime that works best for you. I'm going to just take a quick second to switch over to a screen share here and share our presentation with you. Excellent. Going here, technology at its finest. Here we go. All right, so hopefully you guys at home can see this screen that we have for you. We are going to be talking today about a real life problem that many of us at home have, which is having children who are picky eaters. You guys, the struggle is real and you are not alone. So let's dive into the presentation. So one of our main goals to doing this presentation is just to provide some real life solutions to challenges that many families face. We're hoping that this will not be our last presentation that we have for you guys, but it certainly is the first that is going to tackle having picky eaters at home. All right, so my name is Jackie. I'm a fitness nutrition specialist with Shift Physical Therapy and Wellness, and I'm partnered here today with Faith.
Hi, I'm Faith Schoenecker. I'm a speech language pathologist, and I own Root Speech Therapy. I provide home-based therapy that focuses on speech and feeding therapy. So I care a lot about little mouths and how they develop.
So both Faith and myself are based in Cambridge, Minnesota, but we service people from all over the area and the county. So a little bit more on us later, but let's actually talk about the real things at hand. So on the menu today, we are going to be identifying some differences between typical feeding behaviors and abnormal feeding behaviors. Then we're going to learn how different types of foods that we choose can make a big impact on our picky eaters at home. We'll identify some of the habits that can help that prevent development of adult eating skills. And then we'll identify some red flags, which is where you actually get to put some of that practical application in at home and provide you with some real solutions of things that you can do today that will hopefully help with family mealtime. Yes, this is completely unedited, you guys, so just give us some grace as we do this presentation.
So being a parent, I raise 4 kids at my house, and we are looking at mealtimes taking up a huge portion of our day. We are constantly feeding our kids. When we look at the development of the face and the mouth, the jaw, and all the muscles that go into eating, there's a recipe for disaster sometimes. So when we look at the first couple of years of a child's life, we know that a lot of different things can happen that can throw us off course. And if you're experiencing some stress throughout your day in relation to mealtime, you're definitely not alone. The struggle is real. It takes at least 5 to 6 meals per day to get your little one the nutrition that they need just to grow and thrive. And if you've got a grazer on your hand, the kid that might take a handful here and there and really doesn't like to sit down, you've got up to almost a dozen stressful experiences throughout your day. Serving the snack, eating the snack, cleaning up from the snack. And if there's stress and a big emotional responses, you've got a recipe for stress when it comes to food.
So let's paint the picture for you guys at home, right? So there's a reason why you hopped on this on-demand webinar. Maybe meal times are just complete chaos. Maybe you're fighting with your child to eat some of the things. Maybe you're having 8 to 10 meal times and it's snacks constantly all throughout the day. You can't keep enough food in your house, but your kid won't eat the food. These are all parts of what picky eaters are going through. Sometimes it's refusing the food, sometimes it's throwing the food on the floor, and then sometimes it's just eating all the applesauce pouches because that's the only thing you can get your kid to eat. We get it, we see it. Both of us have kids too that have gone through some sort of this picky eating situation. So
Another dynamic that I hear of a lot is that some members of the family will not eat with the family, and you've got one member of your family who eats this, another member who eats this, and you've got different meals for different people going on throughout the day.
yeah,
And we're here to help with that.
definitely. Okay.
All right, let's talk milestones. So as I was talking about before, the development of the jaws and the face and the tongue are so critical during the first 2 years of life. All these little building blocks are just piling on each other during those first 2 years, and they're really just critical. When you think about those first couple of years of life, if you've got an older kid, it might seem like a blur, but your child was doing it whether or not you were paying attention to it or not. By 6 months of age, we're expecting all these muscles to get firing. We want babies to start to mouth on objects. They're putting everything in. They're moving things in and around their mouth when they first start to experience food on a spoon. And then by 2 years, so just from that little window, we expect a 2-year-old to be able to do most of the movements required for adult food intake. So they should be able to chew, move food around their mouth, and swallow in a way that's similar to everyone else in their family, including mom and dad. So when we look at what kids are eating in those first 2 years, the type of food you choose matters. So we're here to offer some help about that. If your child's way past 2, don't worry about it. Kids catch up and they learn it. It builds on each other.
And would it be fair to say, Faith, that the end goal is to get our child to be eating adult foods, different textures, and that's kind of really the end goal that we're looking for?
Absolutely. So ultimately, we want our child to be a part of the family mealtime that's eating what everybody else is eating.
So then at what point does your child eat what the rest of the family should be eating as we went through those milestones?
So at about 2, we want to look for meals to just be part of the family dynamic. Yep. There might be adjustments, different ways to manipulate the food so that it's accessible for small kids. But yeah, during those first couple of years, we want kids to be on adult food.
And you guys, the food market industry is huge. It's like a $67.3 billion industry in 2019 and projected to be at $96 billion in 2027, which is coming up faster than we realize. So companies that make these pre-made baby foods don't necessarily have an investment on what type of jaw development your child has. They're a marketing industry looking for you to spend the money on the foods that they're creating.
Mm-hmm. So when you walk down the grocery store aisles, one whole aisle is pretty much dedicated to infant and child food. Obviously, there's different things down there that are appropriate at different phases in development, but for the most part, those baby food marketing strategies are working. They're getting us to want to go down that aisle and buy those really cute, adorable little packets that our kids love because they enjoy eating them because they're so easy and pretty sweet.
But what we don't realize is that the types of foods that we are choosing really makes a difference.
So from early on, we're looking at the development of all the structures of the whole body. But in my area, I'm looking at the development of the face. So that includes the tongue, the jaw, the lips, and the cheeks. And even just how we get that food that's on our plate up to our mouth, it really takes some skill. So the more we chew, the more developed our jaws and our facial structures become. So chewing is critical. Next, snack pouches such as applesauce and yogurt are great for on the go, but really we tend to rely on them a little bit too much.
Mm-hmm.
And kids lose the skill for chewing and processing natural food. So applesauce pouches, they're not really an apple. They're an apple that's been taken down, processed, put into a container, and then really we suck the apple. So that's just one example of how the real food has been modified into something else that's a little too easy for our kids to manage. And we want to give them hard work to do. Chewing is a skill that takes work, and we want to teach it. The other thing is prolonged habits into childhood that can impact the development of chewing skills.
And now we're not saying that you can't do the applesauce pouches or the yogurt, but where it becomes a problem is where we start getting into that habit where that's what we're consistently giving our child, and they're not getting some of those more solid foods to use those muscles of the jaw and mouth. So we want to think outside the box of what are some ways that we can get them those whole foods where they can be using those oral structures better.
So no pouch shaming. I'm not shaming the pouch at all. It's just having it as part of the whole food diet.
And it's such a great example for us parents who are on the go that it tends to be the easy solution, but it's not always the best solution.
So when we're looking at habits or patterns that develop during those first couple of years, there can be some hiccups along the way that prevent the development of adult movements. So just listed out here, continued pureed textures. We just talked about that. If we're constantly drinking our calories rather than chewing and swallowing our calories, prolonged bottle use, tethered oral tissue. So if a child has a tongue tie that's been either treated by their dentist or not treated, so the undiagnosed tongue tie, prolonged thumb sucking, prolonged use of a pacifier, delayed introduction to solid foods. If you've got a sick kiddo that's always battling that ear infection or constantly dealing with enlarged tonsils or adenoids, those sick kids, they just use their tongue in a different way. So sometimes those ongoing issues can have an impact on the development of eating skills.
And now picky eating and actual feeding problems can look very similar. So children who might have a challenge to eat certain foods and a wide variety of textures become picky with what they eat. However, it could be something orally that's happening that is creating that food problem, feeding problem. So although they can look similar, it doesn't necessarily mean that your child has an aversion to something, rather than there could be a difficulty swallowing, or their tongue isn't moving correctly, or all the wonderful things that Faith knows a lot more about. So what are some red flags that we can look at that are like, is this picky eating something more that I need to hone in on for my child? Some of them include, these red flags include your child requiring a different mealtime than the whole rest of your family. Mealtime is amazingly important for all of our families. It can be a stressful time, but it doesn't have to be. And if we're having different meal times than the rest of our family, we're losing some of that other connection. Maybe there's a big emotional response to the foods that they're not eating.
Yep. So I know we all know what our kids' favorite things are not, or their non-preferred foods. You know, we can kind of plan on that. But if we're expecting this big explosion of emotion when a certain food is around, even if it's cooking in the kitchen, if somebody else is eating it, if we can anticipate that heightened response, then that might be a sign of a bigger issue that we want to pay attention to.
If your child's not able to sit with the family at mealtime, so not only requiring a different meal, but sitting separately from the family at mealtime, maybe it's because they're eating more times throughout the day than what the other family is eating. So they're just not hungry when you guys have meal times. That's another red flag to pay attention to. And then you're having to make daily modifications to avoid tantrums related to food. You're kind of, maybe it's, you're using some different positive reinforcements, or doing some type of negotiating with your child, or doing things throughout your day that you're having to modify to avoid those big emotions in tantrums related to food.
Another big red flag is failing to meet the nutritional requirements that you feel like your child needs. Either your pediatrician has noticed it or not. You might have an awareness of not being able to get your child the required nutrition that they need for development. If mealtime continues to be a pain point for your family, if it's something that you continually dread, if you used to love cooking and now it's gone out the window because of the stress of mealtime with your kids, that can be a red flag.
if you're also starting to have some relationship issues, maybe it's the parents or your spouse that you're starting to have frustrations or there's tensions built up between both parents and or parent and child, those are big red flags to pay attention to.
Mhm. And with those red flags, just being mindful of your intuition too. We'll touch on this later, but any one of these picky feeding habits can come and go during development. They're just a part of development. But if it's an ongoing red flag that's been an issue for a while, then it's on to the next slide, which is when to decide when to get the next level of help. When is it time to seek out a professional for more advice?
So we mentioned Faith here is a speech pathologist and I am a nutrition coach. We are just a couple resources that is available to seeking outside help. Just know that you shouldn't have to fight this battle alone. Picky eating, feeding problems, they happen in families, which is a big reason why we're doing this presentation, is because the struggle is real. However, you don't have to struggle alone during this time. There are supportive professionals that can kind of take a step back and allow you to continue to grow a relationship with your child without the extra stressors, and or help provide you with some tools and resources to help navigate the picky eating and feeding problems.
Yeah, and finding a professional that understands both the nutrition aspect of what we're eating, the science behind what we're putting into our bodies. And then from my side, being a speech pathologist and a feeding therapist, understanding all the muscles and structures that go into eating. We kind of take eating for granted. And we kind of fail to recognize that it is a hard job for our little ones to learn. So sometimes they need somebody to take a look at how all these structures are working together.
And a lot of times you don't know what you're looking for until you know what you're looking for, right? So a lot of us think of speech pathologists and like swallowing assessments and things like that for our elderly population. However, they're used for our pediatric population as well. And these are expert level professionals that can help see, is this truly a picky eating issue, or there's some other feeding problems that are occurring, that we can develop some exercises in a treatment plan to help navigate the meal times, or mealtime challenges, I should say. So Faith is beyond educated. We will say an expert in this this particular area of speech, of looking at the structures of the mouth and how things are moving and what might be contributing to some of that picky eating. And then you have the nutrition coaching side of things that are, let's picking out habits and how do we slowly make those habits positive for not only the picky eater, but the family as well. What are some small changes we can make over a long period of time to help navigate these challenges that we face in our own home?
So here's some ways that you can make positive changes today. So if you've got kind of a lingering feeling that, well, maybe my child does have a feeding disorder, or maybe we need to look at what we're eating and how we're eating, let that settle and think on it. Here are some things that you can actually do today to make a positive change. And sometimes it's just the right combination of small changes that lead to huge development in milestones. So here's some things you can do today. Get your child to the table as early and soon as possible. So clear off the table if it's covered, move it to side, sit at the table. If you've got a little one, get them to the table in their high chair, whatever they're sitting on, as close to the table as possible. They're going to see how you eat and learn from that.
Allow your littles to help you in the kitchen or help with mealtime. Maybe it's giving them a little task. Maybe they're setting the table or placing the napkins on the table for the family. Maybe they're helping to add the croutons to the salad that's being tossed or whatever it might be, but give them something that helps them or has an activity during mealtime that has them a part of the process at mealtime.
Take your kids grocery shopping with you. Sometimes I really stress about grocery shopping with my kids, but sometimes you got to let loose and just say, hey guys, everybody pick out something new that you want to try this week. Pick out your favorite thing and shop their perimeter, of course, shopping that fresh fruits and veggies, and let them take some ownership in what goes on the table at night.
This day and age where we have delivery pickup and constantly with our groceries, a lot of our young kids don't even know what the inside of the grocery store even looks like. So we kind of get stuck in this rut of having the same meals over and over in this routine. But getting the kids in the grocery store and allowing them to pick out a new fruit or a new vegetable for them to try, you can make it a game at home too. Maybe they can do a blindfolded taste test and you guys can do something fun that is around meal times and trying new things. Then with that, provide choices during mealtime. Allow your kids to pick what they're going to have. You give them 2 options, but then they get to pick from those 2 options, maybe what they're going to be eating.
And if you are a family that serves up the plate in the kitchen, you bring it over to the table or wherever you're eating, try family style where you're bringing all the ingredients over to the middle of the table and your child can see and smell and experience all the flavors in front of them. There's no pressure to put it on their plate. Maybe they get some ownership about putting the amount on their plate. But family style is a really great way to introduce new foods that maybe they're not ready to eat yet, but they need some experience looking at and smelling first.
All right, parents, I know this can be a challenge and our kids can get messy, but let's ditch the sippy cups. Okay.
Yep. So they found that using a sippy cup, especially the ones with the spout, really has long-term impact on the development of the teeth and the jaws. So actually by 6 months, little babies can start taking those little sips from an open mouth cup. It gets messy. Get them down to their diaper, but get them started on the sippy cup early. When you're on the go, maybe it's time to invest in one of the straw spouted sippy cups, but they do have long impact on the development of the teeth and the jaws. So ditch the sippy cup.
And there's a lot out there on the market now that is available where you can be not as messy with an open mouth cup. So just use your resources, look out there. They do have some products that you have that open mouth ability to drink without the sippy cup having the impact on the oral structures as Faith mentioned.
Yep.
Introduce foods to your child multiple times. So just because you introduce one and they have an aversion to it, doesn't mean that they're going to always have that aversion to it. Make sure that you don't give up on those kids. Also, preparing the foods in different ways can have them eating it or finding some type of joy in eating those foods that you maybe introduced one time and they weren't too keen on it, but then another time that you introduce it prepared in another way, they might like it.
Yeah. Let kids play with their food. If they're not ready to play with it or let it be on their hands, there's no way that they're going to have a good experience with it in their mouth. So letting kids explore the sensory experiences of food from an early age is going to be really helpful. If you know that your child doesn't like, let's say, sweet peppers, okay, maybe they can physically take those sweet peppers and toss them in the salad or put them from the cutting board onto the plate and that be the first experience. That's going to be great. Letting messy play happen. It's really good for development.
Plant a vegetable or a fruit garden. Get your kids learning how food grows and where it comes from. Start small. You don't have to go anything real big, and then slowly add to it as the kids seem to partake in the activities.
Consider making a 3-day food journal to identify patterns. So if you're watching this, you might have some concerns about what or how your child is eating. It starts with awareness. So taking a 3-day journal of what your child is eating is a really good way to get started to know what patterns might be happening. You might be experiencing different levels of stress. So or a busy schedule. So I like 3 days or at least 3 days to just see how things go over time. And that's just, your children best. And it's really a really smart way to identify patterns.
It's important for you as a parent too, to do a little bit of self-reflection and see if you also are someone who doesn't tend to venture out with food as well. We are an example for our children. So if we're not venturing in different foods that we're trying, then our children likely aren't either. Also at meal times, it's important to give your kids time to eat. Okay. So that's something that you can do today. we are inundated in a society where we, like school, for example, they have a certain amount of time that they need to get to their seat, open their lunch boxes, or go get their hot lunches. And then by the time they sit down and actually eat, 10 minutes is gone and they are shushed away from the table. Give your child time at home to eat, to chew, to use those structures in their mouth, instead of kind of this way that society is pushing our kids to have mealtime done very quickly.
One last thing that didn't is kind of occurring to me that I'd like to add, and it's not on the list, but getting your child's foot supported during mealtime. That you wouldn't ever think of this, but there's so many dangling feet at the bottom of the chair at mealtime in a tall chair. So get the step stool that you might be using in another part of the house and see if you can get your child's feet planted onto something so that they can feel a little bit more supported and sturdy in their chair. It just makes everything in their core feel a little bit more organized to do the job that they need to up here.
Excellent. So here are just a couple frequently asked questions, and we just want to make sure that if you have additional questions, you can message us directly. We will have a slide here that gives all of our contact information that you can reach out to us directly. But some of the more frequent questions that we get asked in a day is what we're going to address here. So if I start to notice my kid or children being more picky about their foods, how do I know when it's more than just a phase?
So typically picky feeding comes and goes. It's actually, we're hardwired to not trust to eat everything. So it's hard to tease out which is a picky eating phase and what's a sign of a deeper problem. Generally, I'd say anything that lasts longer than 2 months really requires some intervention. Some kids will eat a food and only one food for months on end, and then will totally refuse that food all out. So, and if you're doing a food journal and you're keeping a list of the foods that your child eats, if your child eats less than 20 foods in total, then it's time to seek some professional help.
Awesome. Then how many meals should my kid or kids have in a day? So typically about 5 to 6, which is about what adults should be having as well. 5 to 6 meals in a day are what's recommended and provide the most nutritional benefit for your children.
You might be wondering, where do I start? Who do I go to? Often we can talk to our pediatrician about it, but to be honest, they're not fully trained to identify feeding problems in the way that a feeding specialist or a nutrition expert is. They would probably refer you on anyways. If your gut is telling you something's up here, something isn't right with my child's feeding, you don't need to start with seeing your pediatrician or primary care. You can seek out the individual therapist that you want to see first.
A lot of families have asked to, we're in a society where we're always on the go, right? So could this be affecting your kids' picky eating and or feeding problems? It absolutely can. When we don't have a routine or we're kind of eating on the go all the time, that can definitely have an effect on what's happening. The best advice that we can give you is try to start with a routine. Maybe start small. Make sure that you're getting a good routine for the first couple meals of the day. And then as you master that, just slowly increase nice routines, most importantly during family meal times as well.
Your weeknights might be total chaos with work schedules, sports schedules, but maybe start with just having Sunday night meals, being sit down at the table where everybody chips in, and it can be your whole Sunday evening plan. You're working together to prepare the meal. We're experiencing the food together, but just starting with one meal a week where everybody's on board with healthy eating.
And don't be afraid to reach out to like a nutrition coach that can help you navigate some of the strategies to change those habits and help to develop a routine for the whole family. Truthfully, there are some great strategies that you can use for the families that are on the go, and things that you can do while you're on the go to still promote that good mealtime routine if it's not feasible to be eating at home. All right, well, hopefully you guys gained something out of this presentation, learned something new. understanding that our oral structures and the development of our oral structures really plays a role in our picky eaters and or identifying if there's some feeding problems that are going on. Reaching out to a nutrition coach or a speech pathologist like myself and Faith would be a great first step if you're seeing some of those red flags that we mentioned earlier in the presentation. This is our contact information that you have here below. Feel free to reach out to us with any questions. Follow our Facebook and Instagram pages. We'll have additional presentations where we talk about other real life challenges and problems that affect our youngins.
We would love to hear any tidbits of information that you thought was helpful or something new that you learned. Please do leave us a comment or just reach out and let us know, oh, I didn't know about this before. We would love to hear about that. So thank you for watching.
All right, you guys have a great day. If you have any issues with this video, please make sure that you provide us that feedback.